issues aren't legal issues. They're Biden issues. Biden put Fannie, beautiful Fannie, who's turned out to be now a corrupt district attorney, but in my opinion, they're almost all corrupt. All of the stuff that you see is weaponized government. The DA in New York is being run by the DOJ. They put their top person into the DA's office. All of this stuff, and frankly, I get a lot of credit for it. I think I'm much more popular now because they did it. It backfired on them. They've weaponized government.
If you had beautiful Fannie on your bingo card for today, you can now mark that square off from Donald Trump. The latest news here, this is from Fox News. Lawyers for former President Trump filed a motion Monday to adjourn the trial stemming from Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's charges related to hush money payments. This is Stormy Daniels. Check that off your bingo card for today, too, until the Supreme Court rules on presidential immunity. Well, we want to talk to a legal expert because I certainly am not one. Mike Davis joins us now, founder and president of the Article 3 Project. Thank you, Mike, for being back with us today. There's always so much to talk to you about. We're grateful for your time here on our show.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. I want to give you the opportunity to comment first on this latest news about the Alvin Bragg hush money trial. This is one that doesn't get talked about as much. What is this trial about, and do you think that they will be able to postpone it till after the immunity ruling, which might come at the end of June?
So remember, the Democrats impeached Trump twice for nonsense. They've indicted him 4 times for non-crimes. They've illegally, unconstitutionally placed gag orders on him. They're trying to bankrupt him for non-fraud in New York. They're trying to have Jean Carroll take $100 million away from him for her bogus case against Trump, where the New York legislature changed the law just so Jean Carroll could go after Trump. That all backfired, as Trump just said in your opening. Politically, it's going to propel him back to the White House. Then the Democrats tried to throw the legal Hail Mary and just take Trump off the ballot. Nothing screams democracy like disqualifying your political opponent. Out of the 4 cases against Trump, the 4 criminal cases, the 4 criminal indictments, remember, these are the first indictments ever against a former president. They waited 30 months to bring these indictments, and they're clearly coordinating, like President Trump said, and they're going to lead with this Manhattan hush money case with this Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. Remember, with this case, it is a businessman settling a nuisance claim, and Alvin Bragg has now turned this somehow into felony campaign finance violations. Remember that the prior Manhattan DA declined to bring charges. The Manhattan U.S. Attorney declined to bring charges. The Federal Election Commission declined to bring charges. Alvin Bragg himself declined to bring charges until Matthew Colangelo got sent from a senior political appointee in the Biden Justice Department. He was in the number 3 office, the number 2 to the number 3 in the Biden Justice Department, and he got deployed to New York, and that's when they resurrected this zombie case against Trump. And this trial is supposed to start on March 25th, 2 weeks from today. This is going to backfire on the Democrats, Biden and his lawfare, because when the American people tune into this case, they're going to see that it is an utter sham. Even many Democrats know that this case is a bogus case. It's lawfare. It's election interference.
Yeah, that's the way it looks from my non-legal eagle position. But I think that American voters right now who are comparing their lived experience under a Biden administration, they remember the prosperity they had under a Trump administration. The more and more that these trials, the 4 criminal charges, there's been multiple civil charges as well, the more that is uncovered, the more obvious that the political angle is. And we're seeing that in Fulton County, Georgia, as well with Fani Willis. I guess we're waiting on the ruling from the judge in that county and what happens next. I'd love to just know what your thoughts have been on this trial. I don't think we've talked to you about it since the last time we spoke. What do you think about what has happened so far and what's going to happen with this judge?
There's no question that if this judge, this Kemp appointee, follows the law, Fani Willis should be disqualified. Her office should be disqualified. And this case should be dismissed without prejudice. And they can bring in a new prosecutor who can make an independent assessment on whether to bring these charges against Trump and 18 others, because remember, Fannie Willis had an illegal financial stake in the criminal prosecution that is absolutely unethical. It's absolutely illegal. She hired her unqualified boyfriend, Nathan Wade, her secret boyfriend. She destroyed his marriage. She paid him $250 an hour, $700,000 in counting. He colluded with the Biden White House, including the Biden White House counsel. He billed Fulton County for his meetings with the Biden White House counsel in the Biden White House. He also billed 24 hours in a single day, which I don't know how that's possible, but it's $700,000. And then Big Fanny is getting kickbacks. She's taken these trips with Nathan Wade around the world to Napa, to the Caribbean, to Belize. She's become quite the world traveler because she's taking illegal kickbacks, bribery. She's lied about this, which is perjury. She's gotten other people to lie about this, which is separation of perjury. She's obstructed justice. This is a disaster in Fulton County. Big Fanny's in big trouble. And the lawfare, if this judge actually does his job, this Fulton County case is going to go away.
We're speaking with Mike Davis. He's the founder and president of the Article 3 Project. On Twitter at Article 3 Project. I encourage you to go to the website as well, article3project.org. You mentioned here this colluding with the Biden White House, and I think that this is a wrinkle that has come out of this story that from where I sit, I want to know more about this. What have we discovered through this trial that Fani Willis or Wade, what kind of collusion do we have evidence of, and what does that imply?
Well, this is how stupid Nathan Wade is. He actually billed his time for 2 meetings with the Biden White House, including the Biden White House counsel. So he's obviously, and this is pre-indictment, before they brought this unprecedented indictment against Trump and 18 others for the non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, which is allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. If it were a crime to object to a presidential election, Democrats would be in prison for objecting to Republican wins in 1968, 2000, 2004, and 2016. You don't see Al Gore and John Kerry and Hillary Clinton in prison for objecting. But so Nathan Wade is so stupid, he actually built his time for meeting with the Biden White House, including the White House counsel. And so that's clearly about this case before the indictment because he billed his time for this case. There would be no other reason he could have billed for his meetings with the Biden White House, including the Biden White House counsel, if it were not about this case. So that is just very clear evidence that Biden and his staff are colluding with these prosecutors. Biden has his fingerprints on all 4 of these unprecedented, bogus criminal indictments against Trump, whether it's Matthew Colangelo going to Bragg's office, whether it's Nathan Wade colluding with the Biden White House counsel, or whether it's the Jonathan Sue, Biden's deputy White House counsel at the time, waiving President Trump's claim of executive privilege on behalf of President Biden, which led to the unprecedented, unnecessary, unlawful raid on President Trump, the office of the former president, for presidential records he's allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act, right? And they made it look like it was a counter-espionage or a counter-intel operation when it was all about getting records that Trump declassified and lawfully had under the Presidential Records Act that were very damning to Biden and Obama and Hillary and the deep state, the Russian collusion docs.
Man, there's so much more that I want to know about that specific wrinkle. But meanwhile, in Fulton County, Georgia, while we're waiting on the judge to rule on the specifics of this trial, we can kind of tell right now that Willis and Wade are the feature clowns in the Fulton County circus there. But I'll read to you a comment from one of our listeners. Does any of this Willis stuff change the evidence against Trump? How so? If they are thrown off the case, the question is, what about the evidence that they have piled up against Donald Trump in the Fulton County, Georgia case?
Well, I mean, what if you actually brought in a qualified, sane prosecutor and not Big Fanny and her dumb boyfriends? When you get independent prosecutors looking at this, they're going to say that this is a bogus case against Trump, because even if everything they're alleging against Trump is true, that he tried to pressure people to not certify the election, that is allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. It's also allowed by the First Amendment. It is not a crime to object to a presidential election. It's only a crime to object to a presidential election in third world Marxist hellholes like North Korea and Zimbabwe, and now Washington, D.C. and Atlanta.
Founder and president of the Article 3 Project, Mike Davis, speaking with you right now. Last kind of set of questions here. 9-0 ruling on the ballot. I know that you were heavily involved in covering and paying attention to what was going on in Colorado as you were licensed to practice law there. Huge ruling from the Supreme Court, unanimous. Now we are waiting on the immunity ruling, which could come as late as the end of June. Do you have any anticipation on how this immunity ruling will go and when we might hear about it?
So members of Congress are immune both from civil and criminal prosecution for their official acts, including the outer perimeter of their official acts. That's under the speech or debate clause in the U.S. Constitution and elsewhere. Federal judges are also immune both civilly and criminally. Right now, the president is only immune from civil prosecution because we've never had in 250 years a former president indicted by his political enemy and his successor. So the Supreme Court will have to decide that the former president, that the president of the United States, any president of the United States, is immune from criminal prosecution for their official acts, not their private acts, their official acts. And then I think the Supreme Court will remand this back to D.C. Obama Judge Tanya Shukin to have an evidentiary hearing to figure out what did Jack Smith charge Trump with that is in his personal capacity versus his official capacity. And one key example is that one of the predicate facts in Jack Smith's indictment is they said that President Trump contemplated firing his acting attorney general. Well, guess what? You can't do that as a private citizen. You can only do that as the president of the United States, so he would be immune from prosecution from firing his acting attorney general, or as the commander-in-chief, as the president and the commander-in-chief, he's in charge of the D.C. National Guard. Private citizens are not in charge of the D.C. National Guard, only the president. So if they're trying to say that Trump didn't send in the Guard fast enough, or he didn't send 10,000 troops, or did or didn't, that would be immune from criminal prosecution under presidential immunity. And I would say this, if the Supreme Court does not establish that the president is immune from criminal prosecution for his official acts, not his private acts, then they're going to destroy the presidency and destroy the country. Because when Trump is back in office, think about that. If the Trump 47 Justice Department indicts President Obama for his drone strike on 2 American citizens, including a minor, an extrajudicial drone strike, they could also, the Trump 47 Justice Department could also charge Judge David Barron on the First Circuit, who was at the time Obama's legal advisor, who gave Obama the legal advice that he could drone strike these 2 American citizens, including a minor. You could also charge Biden for his illegal paroling of dangerous, violent migrants into the country who go on to rape and murder American citizens. I don't think the Democrats want to go down this path, and I don't think the Supreme Court should allow it.
Well, if it's ruled on late in June, I guess, is there enough time to litigate this before the actual case, before the election, in order to have a ruling, a charge, a guilty, not guilty verdict on the president before the election?
It takes after the Supreme Court rules, it takes 32 days for the lower courts to it's called issue the mandate. And the reason they do that is so parties can file a motion for rehearing or reconsideration with the Supreme Court. So generally, it takes 32 days. A justice or the court can waive that 32 days, but I can't think of an instance where that's happened on a matter of this magnitude. So I think the Supreme Court is going to rule for Trump and say that he has presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for his official acts, remand it to Judge Shukin for the evidentiary hearing. I think it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to try Trump in D.C. before the election. There's a decent chance that this New York trial, this Alvin Bragg trial for the hush money case, as they call it, settling a nuisance claim, there's a good chance that could be tried before the election. But I don't think Democrats want to lead with that case because it's going to backfire spectacularly on them.
Well, Mike Davis, you always break it down for us in such a wonderful way. We appreciate your time today. Hope to have you back very soon.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you so much. Mike Davis, he's the founder and president of the Article 3 Project.